I never understood why my father never allowed me to go out on a date with a boy when I was younger. He literally flipped out when he heard I was going on a date and made sure it didn't happen. I had always thought he was being overprotective, but it turned out it was a lot more than that. A lot more complicated, a lot darker. I was 20 at the time, and I had never been on a real date with a boy for obvious reasons. My mom had died before I was born, and my dad had adored her so much that he refused to remarry, even when I let him know it was okay and that I wouldn't mind at all. He is a good man and he looked after me. He deserved to be happy and make the best out of his life. But to honor my mother's memory, he stood against it and focused entirely on making me happy. Don't get me wrong, I love my father and I wouldn't trade him for the world, but sometimes he got so overprotective and invaded my space. I guess that is normal for any teenage girl, but I had no one to protect me against it. Eventually, I grew used to his overprotection. Sometimes it even had its perks. Then I met Jason. When it came to boys, I really didn't pay too much attention because I knew it would never work out. My dad wouldn't have it, and in a way, I respected him a lot. I made sure I didn't get too attached because if I did, it would result in unnecessary feelings and heartbreaks. I was not ready to go through that, at least not until college. But Jason found his way into my heart, and after a few days, I began to get so fond of him and wanted to be around him all the time. I knew I had gotten myself into a big mess, but the more I talked to him, the more I fell in love. He asked me several times if we could date, but I didn't know what to tell him. Maybe when my father meets him, he'd like him, and perhaps allow us to become official and go on dates. My dad is a very strict man, and I was sure that he just wanted the best for me. Ever since Mom died, all we had was each other, and I could understand that he didn't want to lose me. I didn't want to lose him either, and that was why I had been respecting his decisions all this time. But with Jason, something had to give. I had a talk about Jason with my dad, and just as I feared, he got so upset that he didn't want to talk about it anymore. We had a big fight after that, and we didn't speak for nearly 2 days until he told me to give him some time to think about it and he would get back to me. But I had my own plans. I was not going to wait around till he was ready to make a decision about my life. I decided that I was going to be a rebel and do what I wanted for the first time in my life. Jason and I had planned a date the night before, and although it was going to be a bit difficult because my dad always wants me in his sight, we decided I'd sneak off and we would have a late evening picnic at a park. The plan was set and in motion, and it was all supposed to go down tonight. My dad came home from work that day, and after we talked for a while, he went to bed. The time was 8 p.m., and Jason was supposed to pick me up in an hour. I ran back to my room to prepare for the first date of my life, and a few minutes later, I was tiptoeing out of the house. I decided to go through the back door to meet with Jason. He had texted and was waiting for me a few blocks away. It was almost like a dream when I had made it to Jason's car and we sped away. I remember feeling so happy and so free. And although Jason couldn't hide his fear, he was proud of me that I actually took a stand and did what I wanted for once. He was so nice to me, and he had planned the perfect picnic. Apparently, he had some connections and we were allowed to use the park for the night. There were beautiful lights and a full basket of snacks, food, and wine. So this is what it felt like to be on a date, I thought. We talked, we joked, and laughed all through the night until Jason finally leaned in to kiss me. Our lips were just a few inches away from each other when we heard rustling in a nearby bush at the park. At first, we thought it was a squirrel. There were a lot of squirrels around there, but then we clearly saw a dark figure, and it disappeared within seconds. Clearly shaken up, Jason got up to his feet to check it out. "Hello? Is anyone there?" There was silence. I begged him to come back. I asked that we should just leave, but I guess he wanted to be brave. If only we knew, we wouldn't have come here in the first place. I should have listened to my dad. Jason turned to face me and shrugged. He said there was no one there, and to be honest, I felt a bit relieved. Suddenly, a figure pounced out of the bushes and grabbed Jason. He lifted him up with one hand and threw him down to the ground hard. I screamed as loudly as I could, and I remember I couldn't move. My feet seemed to be planted to the ground, and although every part of me wanted to run to his aid, I just couldn't move. The figure glanced in my direction and I realized it had a mask on, but his eyes were visible. They were fiery red and not at all human. Then he pulled out a knife and stabbed Jason repeatedly before tossing him aside like a rag. That night was the most painful night of my life. After we were found and I had filed a statement, my dad had come to pick me up from the police station. He was disappointed that I flouted his rules and he was very upset, but glad that I was safe. As for me, I was very remorseful. Never again would I do dates. When we got home, my dad and I had a little talk and he made me understand again that he was just looking out for me. We were not sure who attacked or what that was, but even when I told the police and even my dad, they didn't believe me. But I know those eyes were not human. I just knew it. My dad tucked me in like a child and kissed my forehead. "Good night, sweetie," he said, before turning to leave. As he turned, I saw something that made my heartbeat stop for a few seconds. Right there, on the helm of his sleeves. The sight that would go on to traumatize me for the next few years. A bloodstain. The attacker was my dad.